Hi everyone, welcome to my review of AEW Dynamite for the 4th of August episode. Last night, it was a pretty decent show. It didn't quite reach the highs of the last couple of weeks. We were back in Daly's place in Jacksonville for the homecoming episode that was entitled, and bit of a mixed bag really. Not a whole lot of big storyline developments to talk about, but there were a couple of things that we'll get into. And all in all, pretty decent show, and it's laying out another few weeks ahead of really exciting stuff. Of course, Rampage debuting next week as well on Friday, so that'll be good. But yeah, we'll run through it one by one, and I'll give everything a grade, and we'll see what we end up with at the end. So to start the night, we had the next labour of Jericho in the series, laid out by MJF, and the 5 labours of Jericho. We're on the 3rd one now. Chris Jericho was facing his old opponent from WCW way back in 1999, Juventud Guerrera. Obviously it was quite a wild pick for the opponent. The stipulation was Chris Jericho had to win with a move coming from the top rope. Jericho comes out, he's looking, I must admit, he looks a bit beat up from the last few weeks, especially last week in his death match versus Nick Gage. That probably took it out of him, so he's looking a bit more tiresome for each stipulation, but he got a big pop from the crowd and that cheered him up. MJF came out on commentary, started ripping up signs on the crowd. It was quite funny. The match started with Hoovy coming out. He was buzzing to see the crowd. There was a couple of miscommunications to start with. A couple of, maybe they were going for Hurricane Ranas and the like, head scissors. But obviously it was just a bit of a delay. But they sort of worked past it. They settled into the match pretty well. They were just going back and forth. Jericho started tearing at Juventud's mask. He almost, I don't know if it would have counted, but Juventud went up for a Hurricane Rana off the top rope, but Jericho caught him and then he jumped off the top rope into a Walls of Jericho. I'm not sure if that counts as a move off the top rope really, but I mean I'm not sure it would have counted. Either way, Juventud reaches the ropes. Hoovy gets sort of in control. He gets into a rhythm, he hits the Hoovy driver, which is basically a Michinoku driver, but Jericho kicks out. Jericho then gets back on top, hits the Judas effect, but he can't win with the Judas effect, so he goes up top, and then he does a Judas effect off the top rope, and he timed it really well. It looked really good, and Jericho gets the win. It was quite an uneven start to the match. It ended up being quite good by the end. They got it together. They're both obviously really professional, and they managed to get it done. After the match, Wardlow attacks Jericho, and this was to set up Wardlow as the 4th opponent in the Labours of Jericho series. And MJF will be the special guest referee, so it'll be difficult to see how Jericho gets past this one, but I'm sure they'll come up with an inventive way to do so. And then after the match we had a segment with the Lucha Bros backstage, and again Andrade and Chavo Guerrero are trying to convince them to leave Pac and join Andrade, but the Lucha Bros are not having it. They're saying, "Oh, Pac, you've obviously sabotaged Pac. He's meant to be here." Blah blah blah. So they're wise to it for the minute, but we'll see how it goes after that. Before the next match, which was a 6-man tag, we had a backstage segment with the Dark Order and Hangman Adam Page. The Dark Order were talking, saying they're obviously disappointed to lose the big 10-man match last week, but they still want what's best for Hangman. They want to stick together. They're going to be okay. But Hangman comes in and says, "I need some space. I need to go my own way." And the Dark Order and Evil Uno especially was just saying, "Well, we're just going to have to respect his wishes." It's kind of sad because obviously Hangman's trying to be isolating himself again, but it just developing that story a bit more. Then we had the trios match with John Moxley, Eddie Kingston, and Darby Allin versus Danny Garcia. He's been a standout on AEW Dark, and 2.0, the former Ever Eyes from NXT. They aired on a promo from 2.0 and Garcia before the match that they've cut, and they're just so funny. They're like 2.0, they're just very entertaining guys, and when they all came out to the ring, Darby got a huge pop from the crowd when he came out, and then Moxley came out to Wild Thing, which was amazing. Immediately he gets you hyped up to see them. Started with a good exchange between Darby and Garcia. Garcia showing his technical ability and stuff. He looked really good. I think it's formerly Matt Martel, but I think it's Matt Lee now he's going by. Shouts at Eddie Kingston, "Do you want to take a swing at me?" which is hilarious. Kingston gets worked over he gets isolated from his partners, and they're waiting for the hot tag for Moxley. It's nice to see a lot more of 2.0 as a team. You didn't see an awful lot of them in NXT actually working as a team, and it was really good in this to see them in their element, really. Matt Lee, a big bar, got distracted from Sting. He was like, whoa, he was just starstruck to see Sting, which he got blindsided by a big suicide dive from Darby Allin. He absolutely hit him. It was like a cannonball. Mox eventually got the hot tag, and it was just as amazing as you think. He just absolutely powering through everyone, being the absolute man. And yeah, they all hit their finishers on Danny Garcia, and they get the win. It was before it was a pose at the end that's been doing the rounds of Sting, John Moxley, and Eddie Kingston all posing at the end into the camera. It was funny. It was a real fun kind of exhibition type match. It wasn't anything special. It was nice 2.0 got a spotlight as well as Garcia, and just all of the super baby faces in Kingston, Mox and Allen obviously getting the win. It was just a lot of fun. After that, we had a couple of packages between Team Taz and Brian Cage, who are obviously feuding. Cage says he's not done with them, all that stuff. It was just pretty basic. And then there was another backstage segment with the Elite when they were around the basketball hoop and they were all shooting the basketball and stuff. They were sort of setting up a tag team title match for next week for Gallows and Anderson versus Evil Uno and Stu Grayson of the Dark Order, which is bound to be good. The Young Bucks says they've got no one left to challenge them, so that's obviously an open invitation for someone to confront them eventually. We'll see who that is. Kenny started making fun of Hangman for losing. There was a lot of basketball related references in it. It was quite funny, and they ended the segment by cutting down the net to signify that the game's over or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I watched basketball and even I was a bit confused, but no, it was quite funny. And then we had a match between Christian Cage and The Blade of the Hardy family office. The Blade's been getting a lot of matches on TV recently. They must like him as this sort of person that can just do a job for people. It starts quickly with a brawl. The Bunny is obviously a factor on the outside trying to help the Blade, but she gets chased away from the ring by Layla Hirsch, who she's facing later in the night. So that's just a nice bit of continuity there. Blade sort of gained control through the break, but Christian gained back control, hitting a big crossbody from the top of the turnbuckles to the outside. It was a big crossbody. It looked a bit gnarly actually landing, but it looked okay. There's some general back and forth, and then the match ends with the Blade going for his brass knuckles after distracting the referee, but then Christian hits him with a spear, obviously an ode to his old partner Edge there. And yeah, it was worked well enough, the match. It was definitely a bit too long for what the purpose was, but it had to work through the break and stuff, so perhaps that was a factor. But yeah, it was okay enough. Established Christian more, and we'll hear more from Christian later on about what he plans to do next. So yeah, it was decent. There were a couple of back-to-back actually no, weren't back to back. They were sort of in parallel with each other. Promos between Proud and Powerful and FTR after their match last week got cut short because of Dax Harwood's Cash Wheeler's injury. Of course, he ripped open his arm on the turnbuckle. It looked gruesome. Dax was saying his best friend nearly died and stuff. He was being very dramatic about it, which is true. I don't want to demean his injury, but no, he was definitely using it to get some more heat on it. And it looks like there's going to be another match to hopefully rectify the obviously upsetting ending from last week. And so we'll hopefully see another go round of it, and it'll be a bit better this time. And then we had an in-ring interview from Britt Baker being interviewed by Tony Schiavone. Britt starts talking about how she won the title in Jacksonville, and it's kind of still confusing whether Britt's heel or face or sort of playing it in between. She's definitely got the attitude of a heel, but people love her, and she's sort of leaning into the crowd a bit more now, which is okay, I guess. You can't deny people being over. Red Velvet comes out to challenge her, which is interesting. Obviously, Red Velvet's been improving, and she's got a really good record, which she acknowledges, but Britt says the last time they faced her, she beat her in 3 minutes, but she accepts the challenge from Red Velvet for next week in Rampage, which will be in Britt's hometown of Pittsburgh. So I imagine she'll be the one being cheered in that respect. But yeah, after this she accepts. Rebel tries to blindside Red Velvet, but she's wise to it. But then Britt gets the best of her and stomps her, does like a curb stomp on her. So yeah, just building the match for next week. Kind of out of nowhere. It will undoubtedly be a really good match, but the setup was just maybe a bit weak. But again, it'll be a good match, so you can't complain too much. There was another backstage segment with Andrade and Chavo. This time Chavo brought Fuego del Sol, who's obviously very over with the crowd, is a dark talent, and he's been on Sammy's Log and stuff. He's quite beloved. He has been asked by Chavo Guerrero to clean Andrade's shoes, but he's like, no, obviously I'm not going to do that. So Chavo and Andrade beat him up, obviously just to put more heat on Andrade. It was a nice use of Fuego as well, because they know he's over, so it's a good way to use him. Then we had an in-ring interview again, but this time with Hangman Page, who is obviously quite solemn and upset. Before he can really say anything, he gets interrupted by the Elite. He says that he needs to say something to the Bucks, which sort of implies he was going to apologise to them. Maybe that was the sort of feeling he was going to get for like months ago, saying ignoring them and whatever. But before he can apologise or do whatever he wanted to say to the Bucks, Kenny interrupts him, implying that he's wanting to rejoin the Elite, which Hangman obviously rebukes immediately. Kenny says the Elite doesn't have time for failures like Hangman. He just keeps winding him up until Hangman clocks Omega, and he obviously gets jumped by the whole Elite. He doesn't have a chance. Dark Order do come out, but Uno and Stu Grayson, what Hangman said, he doesn't really want their help in any stuff anymore, so Uno and Grayson just let him get beat up, which is kind of it's nice to see that it's real world, like it's how a real world person would react. Well, maybe a real world person would go and help their friend regardless, but it just shows you that like feelings and actions have like sort of ramifications in the storyline. So it was quite adept that they did that. Instead, Frankie Kazarian comes to try and help Hangman, but he also gets beat up by all the numbers, and Omega ends the segment by hitting Hangman over the head with the belt. It's as I say, it's good that they're showing real emotion with the Dark Order Hangman Elite sort of storyline. You'd imagine Hangman will eventually get his help again, or he will help the Dark Order, whatever. But yeah, it's a bit confusing. I guess it's the only criticism you can maybe have. It can be a bit confusing where it's going, but you just have to trust them and see what we're going to end up with, and you're led to believe from past experiences that it's going to be quite a good one. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see how this plays out. We then had a wee insert promo from Dan Lambert. Obviously I don't know what he is. I think he's a trainer for MMA guys. He's quite renowned for it. He's also had spells in TNA as like a sort of manager type, and he's quite good on the mic and stuff. He's obviously Riley. He's just being an arrogant arsehole basically. And he says he's threatening Lance Archer that he's got backup and he's going to come after him after Lance Archer hit him with the blackout a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, it's just nice they're continuing, I guess, that people don't forget. And Dan Lambert, it's interesting to see who he will bring as backup, whether it's a debut or someone else Lance can feud with for the IWGP US title. Jeez, that's a lot of letters. But yeah, the next match was a title match. It was Miro versus Lee Johnson for the TNT title. Miro comes out to his amazing new theme. Honestly, it makes me think of the orcs from Lord of the Rings, like that sort of like horns and just foreboding atmosphere. It's mental. Dustin Rhodes is in obviously Lee Johnson's corner as his coach. Johnson is able to get some kicks in early on, but Miro is just sort of shaking him off. He starts inviting chops from Lee just to rub it in. He's toying with him a lot. He's basically bulldozing him until Lee hits a DDT. It looks like Miro's going to sell the DDT, but then it looks like he's going to ignore the DDT, I should say, but then eventually it catches up with him when he falls. It was a nice sell of it. He hits some topes on dives to the outside on Miro, just keep him rocked. Hits a crossbody. He super kicks Miro a load of times, and he hits a frog splash for a very close fall. But Miro basically had enough after that. He kicks his head off, he hits his finisher, the game over, and he taps Lee out. Lee got a lot more than expected in this match, but it was worked really well. It was a good showcase of Johnson, and also just keeping Miro dominant as this like monster, and he's doing some great work. Maybe the best work of his career, to be honest. Like, obviously stuff in WWE that people would argue, but I honestly think this is the best iteration of Miro or Rusev that I've seen. So yeah, very impressive, and we'll see who Miro faces next. We then had a follow-up with Christian after his match. It was a backstage interview. He got told he's now the #1 contender after the win earlier in the night. He is buzzing about it. He thanks Layla Hirsch for the help, starts singing I can't remember. It was it's a song about a friend. It was kind of weird. He started singing, but it was quite funny. He makes a reference to how he's not just good, he's elite or whatever. Obviously implying he's going after Kenny Omega for his title. So that might be actually the all-out title match, which might disappoint some people because a lot of people wanted Hangman. But again, Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega is just a really good match to look at as well. So after that we had a #1 contenders match for the not the AEW but the NWA women's title, obviously held by Camille. It was the Bunny and Layla Hirsch, who obviously were getting into each other earlier in the night. Bunny was accompanied by the Harley family office, and Layla Hirsch was accompanied by the best friends for backup. Hirsch targeted Bunny's arm throughout the match. Bunny started using her environment and stuff to her advantage to get that upper hand. Camille was at ringside for the match, as was Nyla Rose, who was like sort of making... It was weird. There was like a sort of back and forth argument going on between Nyla Rose and Chris Statlander throughout the match. It never got into blows, but they were just arguing with each other. And they're facing each other next week, so obviously that was just to set that up. Layla starts firing up. She hits a load of suplexes, goes for a moonsault and missed quite a lot, maybe a bit too much. I think she maybe watched that a little bit, but it was still impressive. Bunny hits the Death Valley driver for the near fall, but Hirsch kicks out and she locks in the armbar for the win. And Camille confronts Hirsch after the match, and you can see the size difference. There's at least a foot, I think, between them, because it's honestly a huge size difference. But yeah, it was a well worked match. Nice to see the two ladies in the Bunny and Layla Hirsch getting some spotlight, and interested to see how they bring Camille into it. Obviously they've had Serena Deeb, who's NWA champion, and Thunder Rosa appear before, so obviously it's just an extension between the relationship, which is good to see. So yeah, it was quite a good overall little presentation. Before the main event, we had a little insert promo from Jade Cargill and Mark Sterling chatting about where Jade's been, basically saying that she's been conducting business. That's their excuse they've made for her period away. They were talking about the hashtag JBrand, and then that was pretty much it. They're just obviously excusing why Jade Cargill's not been on TV. And then we had the main event, which was Malachi Black making his in-ring debut against Cody Rhodes. And Black came to the ring with some spooky get-up and some sort of metal music. It just got the overall aesthetic really down. He's looking really good. Cody gets a very mixed reaction from the crowd, which is interesting to see. Obviously people were rooting for Black and maybe getting a bit tired of Cody. We'll see in the future how that goes. But Black goes after Cody's knee immediately. But Cody almost hits a crossroads, but Black did a really good counter where he just kneed him right in the face, sort of in that like leant over position, so he escaped. Cody goes to the top rope, and then Aleister Black just goes and hits a big running knee, and Cody just goes off from the top rope to the wee ringside table where the ring announcers are, and it was mental, just a big table bump. Cody just makes it into the ring to beat the count. But then Malachi Black hits what used to be called Black Mass, that big spinning roundhouse, which looks insane, on Cody, and he just puts his foot on him and pins him, standing up just with his foot on his chest. He just pins him immediately. Very reminiscent of the Brody Lee squash from almost a year ago, I think, obviously for that TNT Championship. It was very reminiscent of that. Cody, basically a squash match. It made Black look amazing. Cody gets interviewed by Tony Schiavone after the match. It starts off with Cody getting some sort of na 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 goodbye chants, and it's kind of a bit sad because where the promo led, but Cody sort of wins him back. He's talking about how proud he is of AEW. It was very much like a shoot sounding thing. He talks about how the company's had its ups and downs. He's had fights with the EVPs and whatnot. Like, there's been some tension, but he's bringing real life into it to make it more relatable, I guess, in the way Cody tries to do often with his promos. Calls the Daily's Place the AEW Amphitheatre. And then, he sort of iterates that he's maybe looking towards retiring. He takes his boot off, and he looks ready to put his foot down, his boots down, and maybe retire. But then Black comes back to the ring and hits him with a crutch before he can take his other boot off. So it's maybe just a lingering doubt: is Cody gonna retire? Is he just working? He probably is just working, I'm not gonna lie, but I mean, it's a good way to garner like a sort of realistic feel to all of this and how disappointed he obviously feels of losing. But it's obviously extending the feud, or it's maybe opening up the door for Cody to go away for a while. Either way, it'll probably end up being quite a good development. But great presentation of Black, and a great way to end the show, really. A kind of mixed show. Not a lot of amazing wrestling on it, but there were some fun moments, and the main event certainly made it a worthwhile watch in itself. But we'll see next week with obviously Rampage debuting, the two things. I doubt I'll be reviewing Rampage and Dynamite because I only have so much time in the week to do all this stuff, but I'll definitely keep doing with Dynamite, and then we'll just catch up with what happened with Rampage as well. But let me know what you thought of the show and the main event in particular. I'm interested to see if it resonated with people as much as it did myself. I could certainly see a lot of people being critical of it, like Cody feigning retirement and all that stuff, but I think it was pretty effective. But I can certainly see how critics might say otherwise. So let me know what you think, and like and subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.